Rain drifted through the rusty ceiling of Dockside Station like thin silver strings, dripping onto piles of broken metal and forgotten machines. The station always smelled of oil, smoke, and loneliness. And in the middle of that scrapyard, surrounded by sharp wires and shattered crates, a small alien girl sat with her knees pressed tightly to her chest. She looked like she was trying to make herself disappear. Lieutenant Hale had walked this path 100 times before. He worked security patrol for Dockside, which meant long hours, bad pay, and worse coffee. Usually he kept his head down and simply got the job done. But today something felt different. Maybe it was the quiet tremble of the air. Maybe it was the uneasy silence between the machines. Or maybe it was because he noticed her, really noticed her, before he even understood why he stopped walking. The girl was small, no older than 10 in human years. Her skin was pale blue like the soft glow of frozen moonlight. Dust and grime streaked across her arms. Her hair, thin and silver white, hung around her face like tangled threads. She didn't look up when approached. She didn't move at all. She seemed carved from fear and cold metal. Around them, traders and mechanics walked past without slowing. A few glanced her way, but their eyes slid off her like she was just another broken part lying around. Some muttered dismissive remarks. Another useless one. Probably too weak to bother with. Not worth the trouble. Felt anger rise in his chest, not burning but heavy and tired. He had seen cruelty in many forms over his years in service, but the casual kind, the kind that didn't even bother to be hateful, that was the one he hated most. He stepped closer, boots splashing in shallow puddles. The girl tensed. He noticed the tiny twitch in her shoulders, the way her fingers dug into her sleeves. She expected to be kicked aside, yelled at, or ignored again. That expectation had been carved into her like a deep scar. Crouched so he wouldn't tower over her. No sudden moves, no loud voice. Just calm. Hey, he said gently, you okay out here? She didn't lift her head right away. When she finally did, felt his breath catch unexpectedly. Her eyes were a soft lavender color, filled with exhaustion that looked far too old for her small frame. There was fear, yes. But beneath the fear was something even harder to look at, acceptance. As if this was the only life she expected to have, as if she thought she deserved nothing better. She didn't answer his question. She simply stared like she was waiting for him to walk away. Everyone else had. Glanced around. The rain was getting heavier, dripping from pipes and pooling around her bare feet. She had no blanket, no shelter, no bag, nothing. Whoever had abandoned her hadn't even bothered leaving her a coat. He wanted to ask who she belonged to, but the answer already sat beside her in the form of bruises and broken trust. Slowly extended his hand. You don't have to stay out here. I can get you somewhere dry, somewhere safe. The girl's eyes darted to his hand, then back to his face, suspicious and frightened. She made a small sound, almost like a breath being swallowed, and shrank back. She didn't trust him. Why should she? He was just another stranger in a universe that had taught her every stranger meant danger. Didn't pull his hand away. He kept it steady, palm open, voice quiet. I'm not gonna hurt you, I promise. Promises meant nothing to someone who'd heard them broken, but he said it anyway, because promises still meant something to him. The girl hesitated for a long time. Rain continued to fall, tapping softly against metal. People kept passing by without even turning their heads. The whole station felt like it was holding its breath. Finally, very slowly, she reached out with trembling fingers and touched his hand. Not grabbing, just touching, testing. Closed his fingers gently around hers, just enough so she knew she wasn't alone anymore. Come on, he whispered. Let's get you out of the cold. The girl rose to her feet unsteadily, leaning just a little into his side. It was the smallest shift, but felt it like a weight placed into his care. Everyone else had walked past her without a second thought. But saw her. He didn't know her story, didn't know her name, didn't know what had broken her so badly. But he knew one thing with quiet certainty. She wasn't worthless. Not to him. Not anymore. The medical bay of small patrol ship was never meant to feel like a home, but for the alien girl now lying under a warm blanket, It felt safer than anything she had known in a long time. The soft hum of generators filled the air, steady and calm, like a heartbeat the universe had forgotten to give her. Watched from the doorway as she slept. Her breaths came shallow at first, as if her body didn't quite believe it was allowed to rest. Every once in a while, her fingers curled tightly, like she was clutching at something invisible. Fear, probably, memories, both. When she finally opened her eyes hours later, she looked around with confusion, quiet, cautious confusion. She touched the blanket lightly, as though amazed it wasn't rough or cold. Stepped closer so she wouldn't be startled. "You're safe here," he said gently. The girl didn't answer. She simply nodded once, then sat up slowly, hugging the blanket to her chest as if letting go would make the warmth vanish. For the next 2 days, she remained silent. She ate whatever food gave her, drank water like she hadn't tasted anything clean in years, and slept restlessly, waking from dreams she never explained. Whenever he entered the room, she stiffened, not because she feared him, but because she didn't know how to exist around someone who cared. Didn't push. He knew enough about trauma to understand that forcing her to talk would only build more walls. So instead, he worked quietly near her, fixing equipment, updating reports, or simply sitting on the opposite side of the room so she wouldn't feel trapped. Sometimes he caught her watching him with wide, curious eyes, as if he were a puzzle she had never seen before. Sometimes she looked away quickly, embarrassed. Other times she didn't. On the third day, while the stars drifted slowly outside the small window, brought her a cup of warm broth. She took it with both hands, holding it close to her face so the steam touched her cheeks. A long silence stretched between them, not heavy, just slow, careful. Then, in a voice so soft almost missed it, she whispered, "Why did you help me?" He sat down across from her, resting his elbows on his knees. "Because you needed someone," he said honestly, "and nobody else stopped." She stared into the cup, her grip tightening. "People leave me," she said quietly, "every time." Felt something twist inside his chest. "Not everyone," he replied. "You met me, didn't you?" The girl didn't smile, but something in her expression softened. The tiniest crack in the wall she had built around her heart. After another long pause, she swallowed and whispered, "My name." It sounded fragile, like she wasn't sure she was allowed to have a name anymore. Repeated it softly. He liked the way it sounded, gentle, hopeful, worth saying. She blinked fast, as though the way he said it surprised her. From that moment on, the silence between them changed. It wasn't empty anymore. It was filled with small things, her carefully watching him fix wires, her quiet footsteps as she explored the ship one room at a time, her shy glances whenever he spoke to her. One evening, she stood by the viewport, staring at the stretching endlessly before them. Her reflection in the glass looked delicate but thoughtful. "Those stars," she murmured, "my people said only strong ones get to chase them." Walked to her side, keeping a respectful distance. "Strength isn't about being bigger or faster," he said. "Strength is surviving what others couldn't." She turned her head slightly, looking up at him. "But I was left behind." Shook his head. "That doesn't mean you were weak. It means they didn't understand your worth." Hugged her arms around herself. "Worth," she said the word like it was unfamiliar, like it tasted strange in her mouth. "You have it," assured her, "even if others couldn't see it." Her eyes shimmered faintly, not from tears, but from something rarer. Hope trying to grow inside a heart that had been taught never to hope. That night slept more peacefully. Checked on her once, making sure the blanket hadn't slipped off. For the first time, she didn't flinch in her sleep when he approached. The small medbay still wasn't a home. The ship still wasn't warm or beautiful. But something had changed in the quiet space between them. For the first time in her life, was beginning to believe she wasn't alone. Days passed slowly aboard's patrol ship, drifting through the quieter lanes of the sector. Began to walk with steadier steps, though she still paused at every strange sound. The ship's metal corridors echoed, and sometimes she clutched the wall, waiting for the noise to fade. Never rushed her. If she stopped, he stopped. If she needed silence, he gave it freely. One morning, while sat cross-legged on the floor learning how to open a food pack, received a call on the ship's comm. The message carried a tone he didn't like, tight, rushed, full of alarm. Dockside station's emergency channel crackled loudly. All patrol ships be advised, raider faction entering the outer systems. Known to target unregistered alien miners, proceed with caution. Their last heading suggests movement toward the mid-sector. Repeat, do not engage alone. Felt a cold pressure settle inside his chest. Raiders, not the simple thieves or station troublemakers he dealt with most days. These were organized hunters, the kind who kidnapped rather than killed, because prisoners sold better than scrap. He glanced toward. She was watching him with bright, worried eyes. She didn't understand the message, but she understood the tension. "Is something wrong?" she asked softly. Forced his voice to stay calm. "Just some trouble in the sector, nothing we can't handle." Pulled the blanket closer around her shoulders. "People like them, they take children like me." "Froze, you know about them." She nodded slowly. "Before I was left behind, they came to our colony once. My people hid. The raiders scan for our kind. They say we have something special in our blood, something they want." She said the words quietly, but felt everyone like a sharp stone. He knelt beside her. "I won't let anyone take you, not ever." Searched his face, trying to see if he meant it. "Others said that too," she whispered. "They didn't stay." "I'm not them," replied firmly. But he knew words were not enough. He had to act. That afternoon, he upgraded the ship's shields and double-checked each emergency hatch. He set new access codes, ones even station engineers wouldn't know. Followed him from room to room, watching him with quiet seriousness, sometimes holding a tool for him without being asked. She didn't talk much, but the fear showed in the way she kept touching the hem of her shirt or the small pendant she wore, a cracked crystal hanging from a thin thread. Had never asked what it meant. It seemed sacred to her, a piece of a life she lost. When the ship drifted near a fuel outpost, docked to refill and get updated intel. He left inside the ship, sealing the hatch behind him. Inside the outpost's main office, he received a more detailed warning. Raider ships had been spotted closer, too close. They were sweeping system after system, scanning for high-value biologicals. And species, small, gentle, rarely seen, was on that list. Kept his face calm, but his heartbeat thudded loudly in his ears. He ended the briefing quickly and hurried back to the ship. Was waiting at the top of the ramp. She had not moved from the hatch. Her eyes were wide when he approached. "You took too long." Softened his voice. "I'm here now." Stepped aside so he could enter, but she didn't walk away. Instead, she tugged the sleeve of his jacket lightly. "If raiders come, will you leave me somewhere safe? Somewhere they cannot find me." Shook his head at once. "I'm not leaving you anywhere alone, and they're not getting near you." Her fingers tightened on his sleeve. "I don't want to be a burden." He placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "You are, you never were." Looked down at her shoes, as if unsure she deserved to hear those words. They sat together in the cockpit as the ship undocked. The stars stretched ahead like endless paths, glowing softly. Leaned slightly toward the window, watching them drift by. But fear sat heavy in her small chest, and worry sat heavier in. He set the ship on a safer route, but he knew the danger was coming. Raiders did not stop easily. They did not change paths for kindness or mercy, and had already suffered enough for 10 lifetimes. As the engines hummed steadily, made a silent promise to himself. No matter what storms approached, no matter what threats appeared on the radar. This time, she would not be abandoned. This time, someone would stay. The night cycle aboard ship was quiet, almost peaceful. The lights were dimmed to a soft blue glow and slept curled beside the wall of the small crew room. Sat alone in the cockpit, reading the radar screen with tired eyes. He had not slept well since the raider warning. His instincts kept telling him the same thing. "They're coming." The stars outside looked calm, but new space could hide dangers behind the smallest flicker. He leaned back in the pilot's chair, rubbing a hand across his face. Maybe he was worrying too much. Maybe they would pass through the sector without noticing his small patrol ship. Maybe. A sharp alarm cut through the silence like a knife. Shot to his feet, the radar lit up in flashing red circles, multiple signatures, fast-moving, closing in. The ship vibrated slightly as if shivering under a cold touch. "Not now," muttered, rushing to the controls. "Not here." He activated shields to maximum, locked the outer hatches, and sent out a false transponder signal, anything to make the ship look uninteresting, unimportant. But raiders did not chase random targets. They hunted with purpose. Down the hallway, stumbled out of the crew room, blinking rapidly. Her silver hair was messy, her small hands shaking as she held onto the doorway. "What's happening?" she whispered. Didn't want her to see fear on his face, but she was already reading it in the way he moved. "Raiders," he said. "They found us." His breath hitched sharply. "No, please, not again." Stepped forward and gently rested a hand on her shoulder. "I won't let them take you." The ship shook violently as the raiders fired a warning shot, meant to scare, not damage. They wanted the ship intact. They wanted what was inside. Led to an emergency alcove, a small reinforced compartment built to protect passengers during violent docking. He knelt to her eye level and softened his voice. "You stay here. No matter what happens, do not come out until I call for you. Understand?" Her eyes filled with panic. "I don't want you to leave." "I have to defend the ship," said, "but I will come back, I swear it." Grabbed his sleeve. Her fear was raw, shaking through her body like a storm. "They always take people away from me." "Not this time," he whispered. He closed the alcove door gently. The latch clicked into place. Moments later, metal claws from the raider ship scraped against the hull, the sound of monsters trying to tear open a home. The docking latch forced itself onto the hatch with a heavy clang, shaking the whole corridor. Positioned himself behind a corner, weapon ready. He wasn't a soldier anymore, but the muscle memory never disappeared. His breath slowed, his grip steadied. The raiders broke through with a burst of sparks. 4 armored figures stormed in, moving with brutal confidence. Their voices echoed through the ship, low and metallic. "Scan for biosignature. The target is here." Stepped out and fired before they even spotted him. The first raider fell instantly. The second shouted and returned fire, bolts striking the walls and sending fragments of metal flying. Ducked behind a console, heart pounding but steady. The corridor flashed with red and white light as weapons clashed. He leaned out and fired again, hitting another raider in the shoulder. But the last 2 advanced quickly, tall and heavily armored. They cornered him near the end of the hallway. One raider kicked weapon from his hand. The other slammed him against the wall with a metal-covered arm. Pain burst across his ribs as he struggled, grabbing at the raider's wrist. "You shouldn't have interfered," the raider growled through his mask. "Hand over the child." Spat blood and glared at him. "Not a chance." The raider lifted a stun baton, its electric lines glowing. "Then you die first." His vision blurred. He braced himself, trying to twist free. But suddenly, the raider's helmet turned. A soft gasp came from down the hallway. Had stepped out of the alcove. Her small figure trembled, her hands clenched at her sides. She looked terrified, but she didn't run. She didn't hide. She stood there because was in danger and she couldn't stay away. The raider paused, lowering his baton slightly. They wanted her alive. They needed her alive. That hesitation was all needed. He slammed his elbow into the raider's throat, grabbed the dropped baton, and swung it with all his strength. The electric shock exploded against the raider's armor, sending him crashing to the floor. The second raider lunged at, but acted before she had time to think. She grabbed the fallen weapon on the ground, clumsy hands, shaking fingers, and shoved it toward. He grabbed it, rolled sideways, and fired. The last raider fell. Silence filled the ship, heavy and unreal. Stood frozen, chest rising and falling fast. Got to his feet slowly, wincing in pain. He looked at her with shock and pride. "You were supposed to stay hidden," he said gently. Tears slipped down her cheeks. "I didn't want you to disappear like everyone else." His expression softened as he walked to her. He knelt, touched her trembling hands, and whispered, "I'm right here, and I'm not going anywhere." She fell into his arms, clinging to him with desperate relief. For the first time in her life, someone had fought for her. And for the first time, she had fought for someone too. The corridors of ship felt different after the battle, quieter, heavier, carrying a smell of scorched metal and burned wires. The lights flickered weakly along the ceiling, showing small patches of smoke drifting through the air. Guided toward the medbay, moving slowly so she wouldn't trip over broken panels scattered across the floor. His ribs ached sharply with every breath, but he hid the pain behind a tight smile. Kept glancing up at him, her expression full of guilt and worry, as though she believed she had caused all of this. "You're hurt," she whispered. "I'll be fine," said, though the bruising under his shirt pulsed like fire. "I've had worse." Didn't seem convinced. She took the corner of his sleeve between her fingers, holding on like she feared he might fall. The gesture was small, but too, it felt like trust, fragile but real. When they reached the medbay, he sat on the examination bed and let out a slow breath. Stood close, refusing to leave his side. She kept touching the edge of the table, like she needed to make sure it was real. Reached for a diagnostic scanner and activated it. The soft blue light passed over his ribs, and a quiet beep confirmed what he already expected. 2 cracked ribs, several deep bruises, nothing life-threatening. Still painful, though. His hands tightened into fists. "They could have killed you." "But they didn't," said gently, "because you were brave." "No," she said quickly, "I was scared." Being scared does erase bravery. It makes it stronger. She looked at him, confused, as if bravery was a language she had never been taught. Continued in a soft voice, "You helped me, you saved my life." His breath hitched. "I just didn't want you to vanish. Everyone else vanished." He placed a hand lightly on her shoulder. "I'm not going anywhere." Her eyes softened, but there was something deeper beneath them, something she was fighting inside herself. A storm of memories she had carried far too long. Could see it, could feel it. "Sit," he said, patting the bed beside him. Climbed up slowly, legs dangling over the edge. She stared at her hands as if they held the whole truth of her life. Finally, she whispered, "When I was little, raiders came to my colony. They took many children. My parents hid me. But when the raiders returned, the elders said I was too weak to survive the next attack. Too small, too slow. They said leaving me behind would help them run faster." Felt his heart sink. "They abandoned you to save themselves." She gave a tiny nod. "They thought I would only slow them down." Closed his eyes for a moment, steadying the anger rather than letting it show. When he opened them again, his voice came out firm but warm. "What they did was wrong, completely wrong. You deserved protection, not abandonment." His lips trembled, but maybe they were right, maybe I'm useless. Gently lifted her chin so she looked at him. "You picked up a weapon with shaking hands and stood in front of raiders twice your size. You didn't run, you didn't hide. You helped me fight. That is not useless, that is courage." Her throat tightened. "I didn't want to be afraid anymore." "There's nothing wrong with fear," said. "Fear is what tells us what matters. You were afraid of losing me. That means you care." She blinked rapidly, trying to hold back tears. "Nobody ever said that before." "Well," he replied softly, "they should have." A quiet stillness settled over them. The hum of the engines was faint now, damaged but steady. Outside the small medbay window, stars passed like drifting lanterns. Leaned her head against his arm. He didn't move away. He didn't tense. He simply let her rest there, her fragile warmth pressing gently against him. For minutes they stayed like that. No alarms, no shouts, no violence, just breathing quiet and steady. Then whispered something he almost didn't hear. "I want to be stronger." Turned his head slightly. "Stronger how?" She lifted her face, eyes shining with new determination. "Strong enough to stay, strong enough so no one has to protect me all the time, strong enough so I don't have to lose anyone ever again." Felt a warmth spread through him, not pride, not relief, but something deeper. "You're already becoming that," he said, "and I'll help you every step." Gave the smallest smile he had ever seen from her, fragile, hesitant, but real, and realized something quietly powerful. The girl who once hid from every sound had decided she would not run anymore. She had chosen to fight for someone. She had chosen to fight for herself. And that choice would change everything. The ship drifted through a calmer part of the sector, far from the raider ambush. Had repaired what he could, patching leaks, rewiring broken circuits, and resetting navigation. He moved slower than usual because of his injured ribs, but stayed beside him every moment, handing him tools, steadying ladders, watching with wide, observant eyes. She didn't speak much, but the silence between them was no longer heavy. It felt peaceful, like a quiet space they both shared. One afternoon, while worked on the damaged engine stabilizer, sat cross-legged on the floor, studying had given it to her so she could learn basic engineering tasks. Nothing dangerous, just simple things to help her feel capable. She practiced each step carefully, her brow furrowing in concentration. "You're picking things up fast," said from behind the open panel. Glanced up, looking almost surprised by the compliment. I just follow the instructions." "That's how everyone starts," he replied with a smile. She looked down at her hands. "Do you think I can be useful, not just a burden?" Paused his work and turned toward her. "You're already useful. You helped me repair this ship, and you saved my life." She hugged her knees, trying to hide a shy smile that fought its way to her face. It was small, almost invisible, but saw it. He'd learned to read the quiet expressions she made, the ones most people would miss. Later that evening, they sat in the cockpit as the ship glided past a bright nebula. Colors of blue, gold, and violet swirled outside the window, painting the darkness in soft light. Pressed her forehead to the glass, her breath fogging the surface. "It's beautiful," she murmured. Watched her, not the nebula. There was something peaceful in the way she looked at the universe, like she was seeing it for the first time without fear. "Do you miss your home?" he asked gently. Her fingers traced a small circle on the window. "I don't know," she whispered. "Home was a place where people left me. Home was a place where I didn't belong." His chest tightened. "You deserve a place where you belong." She turned toward him, her eyes reflecting the nebula's glow. "Do you think I can belong anywhere?" "Yes," said without hesitation. "With the right people you can." Didn't speak for a long moment. Her eyes softened, turning gentle and searching. "Am I with the right person now?" Swallowed. No one had asked him something so vulnerable in years. "Yes," he said quietly, "you are." She didn't smile. Instead, she leaned closer, resting her small head against his shoulder. The gesture was so soft, so trusting that felt something shift inside him. A deep, protective warmth he didn't fully understand, but didn't question either. He placed a careful hand on the top of her head. "Get some rest." She nodded but didn't move away. "Can I stay here for a little while?" "Of course." They watched the nebula together, bathed in shifting colors. The silence between them felt whole, like two broken pieces finally fitting together. The next morning taught how to run basic system checks. She asked more questions than usual, curious ones, hopeful ones. "What does this button do? Why is the engine louder sometimes? Can I try fixing the small wires?" Her voice had gained small fragments of confidence, treasured every one. At one point, she accidentally connected two wrong wires, creating a tiny spark. She jumped back with a gasp, expecting him to be angry. But only chuckled softly. "Happens to everyone, even me." "You're not upset." "It was a mistake. Mistakes help you learn." She blinked, surprised, as if the idea that mistakes weren't punishable was completely new to her. In the afternoon, they shared a simple meal. Ate slowly, occasionally glancing at as if she wanted to say something but didn't know how to begin. Finally, she placed her cup down and whispered, "Why are you so kind to me?" He set his utensils aside and looked at her with a steady expression. "Because you deserve kindness, because you matter." Her lips parted slightly, struggling to hold back emotion. Then she whispered something small but powerful. "I wish someone like you found me long ago." Felt his throat tighten. I'm here now and I'm not leaving. She reached across the table, placing her small hand over his. It trembled, but she didn't pull away. For the first time, she initiated the touch and understood something unmistakable. This wasn't just protection anymore. This was a bond, a real one. One built from fear, courage, trust, and quiet moments shared between two lost souls. A bond no one else in the galaxy would have believed possible. But it was theirs, and it was growing stronger every day. The journey toward the galactic refuge station took 3 quiet days. Spent most of the time teaching small tasks, how to read fuel levels, how to adjust oxygen flow, how to check communication signals. She learned quickly, surprising even herself. Every time she completed something right, gave her a soft nod or warm word, and her chest filled with a gentle pride she had never felt before. But on the 4th day, just as the station came into view, everything changed. A sharp alarm cut through the cabin. Jumped, what's happening? Rushed to the controls. Something's wrong with the stabilizers. They shouldn't be failing this fast. The ship trembled violently, lights flickering. Grabbed the side rail to steady herself. Is it dangerous? She asked, her voice barely steady. Yes, answered honestly. If the stabilizers fail completely, we'll spin out of control. He opened a panel beneath the dashboard. Electrical sparks shot out. The smell of burning metal filled the cockpit. His eyes widened. Your ribs, you can't crawl inside that panel. He grimaced. She was right. The shaft was narrow, and his injured side was already throbbing from the sudden movement. But someone had to go. He said, turning toward her, I need you to help me. She froze. Me? You're the only one small enough to reach the main stabilizer relay. I'll guide you through everything. Fear clouded her face, her hands shook. What if I make a mistake? What if I break something? You won't, said softly. I trust you. She stared at him, really stared, as if trying to decide whether she could believe in herself the way he believed in her. His eyes held steady, firm, patient. Slowly she nodded, squeezed her shoulder. You're brave, you've always been brave, let's do this. She crawled into the tight maintenance tunnel, her breath quick and shallow. Sparks glowed in the darkness like angry fireflies. The ship shook again, and she could hear metal groaning around her. She whispered, voice echoing in the narrow space. I'm right here, he said from outside. You're doing great. Move forward until you see a small glowing cylinder. She crawled until she found it, the stabilizer relay flickering weakly. I see it, she said. Good, now you'll find 2 wires on the left. One yellow, one silver. Tell me what they look like. The yellow one, she held it carefully. It looks cracked. That's the problem. You need to replace it with the spare wire beside the relay, slow and steady. Her hands trembled as she reached for the spare wire. A burst of sparks shot toward her, but she didn't stop. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and kept going. You're doing perfect, said. His voice was calm, strong, guiding her through every step. She disconnected the damaged wire, connected the new one, and tightened the small clamp with shaking fingers. Oh, I think I did it. Now press the relay reset. She touched the small button. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the ship steadied. The lights brightened. The alarms fell silent. Let out a trembling breath. It worked, it worked. She backed out of the tunnel and helped her stand. Her hands were black with soot, and her small face streaked with sweat and dust. Placed a hand on her cheek. You saved us. Her lips parted, shaking with emotion. No one ever needed me before. I did, he whispered, and you came through. Her eyes filled with tears, not of fear, but of something deeper, something healing. She leaned forward and hugged him, small arms tight around his torso. Held her carefully, feeling her heartbeat against his chest. When they reached the galactic refuge station, medics and officers rushed to help them dock. But the moment stepped out of the ship, something unexpected happened. People stared at her, not with disgust, not with dismissal, but with curiosity and respect. She walked beside, holding his sleeve lightly. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel like a shadow. She felt seen. One officer approached and bowed his head slightly. "We received your emergency signal. You stabilized the ship yourself." Swallowed nervously, I helped. Smiled proudly. "She saved us, couldn't have done it without her." Whispers spread among the crew. Admiration, surprise, recognition. Felt warmth bloom in her chest. Not fear, not shame. Pride. That night, safe inside the station, she sat beside on a quiet balcony overlooking the stars. The sky shimmered like a curtain of diamonds. As she said softly, "Thank you for believing in me when no one else did." He placed an arm around her shoulders. "You weren't worthless, you were just waiting for someone to see you." She leaned against him, calm and content. "Then I'm glad it was you." And under the silent stars, the human and the alien girl, two souls once abandoned by the universe, found a bond stronger than fear, stronger than pain, stronger than loneliness. A bond built not from blood, but from choice. A bond that made them family. And this time, finally believed she was someone worth saving.